Hello, Aries. If you're hearing this right now, it's not by accident. You didn't stumble on this video. This video found you at the exact moment you were meant to receive it, because something is coming. And this time, it's not just a feeling. Someone's about to reach out to you. A lawyer, a representative of justice. But what they bring isn't just paperwork. It's not just money. It's a message from the universe. You don't have to keep carrying it all alone anymore. If you've been feeling like you're standing at a doorway you can't quite name, stay with me, because in just a moment, I'm going to tell you about a door that's opening and why it's calling your name. Not every life-changing moment arrives with a loud knock at the door. Sometimes it's just a whisper in the wind, a strange title you scroll past, a familiar tone from your phone, and without knowing why, your heart skips a beat. Aries, this isn't a random message. This isn't a video you happen to click on. This is a calling from a deeper layer of energy, a place where your soul has been quietly waiting for the truth to find its way back to you. Someone is trying to reach you, not to accuse, not to wound, but to return a piece of something you once lost. A letter, an email, a phone call that feels like it got lost but somehow arrived right on time. On the other end of that message is the voice of truth, the hand of law, and something even deeper, the hand of divine justice. The message coming your way isn't just paper, it's not just protocol, and it's definitely not a coincidence or a glitch in the system. This is a signal, the first sign of a door slowly opening, a door that leads back to a part of you that long ago slipped away, a right, an opportunity, a voice, or maybe the simple feeling of being respected. You're not alone. So many strong souls like you, fireborn, Aries-hearted, have walked too long in silence. You didn't scream, but you still hoped. You never gave up, but you weren't sure how to start again. That's why this message is here, not to command you, but to awaken you. Ask yourself, why are you here listening right now? Why does something in you stir when you hear these words? Why does it feel, even if nothing is concrete, that this message is meant for you? It's because you're ready, not always ready to act, but ready to listen, to reflect, to step toward a light you've known deep down you deserve. This legal message might involve frozen money, a contract left unpaid, a benefit overlooked, or a compensation someone once ignored. But the details, they aren't the point. What matters is the feeling of finally being seen, of being acknowledged, of being answered after years of silent waiting. How many times have you whispered, "It probably won't happen"? How many times have you convinced yourself, "I'm just imagining things"? But you weren't, Aries. Your intuition wasn't wrong. You felt something was coming and you were right. This waiting wasn't for nothing, not this time. For years, you've lived like no one had your back. You've been strong. You've been independent. You never waited for anyone to save you. But deep down, you still carried a quiet prayer, a hope that one day justice would call your name. And now that moment is arriving. A message, a shift, a nod from the universe that says, "I see you and I'm ready to make things right." The real question isn't, is it real? The real question is, are you ready to open that door? You don't need to answer yet, just feel into it. And if your heart is stirring, if your gaze is starting to look past the shadows and towards something brighter, know this, you're not wrong. Write down one thing you feel you've lost, something you once gave up on, something you didn't dare ask for or thought you'd never get back. Share it if you feel called. You're not alone, you're stepping into a threshold, one most souls never even get invited to walk through. But what's really being returned to you, it's not just property, it's healing. Aries, true justice doesn't need the sound of a gavel to be real. It doesn't wear a black robe. It doesn't require a courtroom or a witness stand. True justice, when it comes dressed in something sacred, doesn't arrive with fanfare. It walks in barefoot, quiet, gentle, but sure. Sometimes it shows up as an email you nearly deleted thinking it was spam, a missed call from a number you didn't recognize, an envelope you almost tossed out until you saw your name on it. Strange, isn't it? How the smallest things can carry the missing piece you've been aching for. A case you thought was long closed, a payment frozen so long you stopped hoping, a benefit you thought had been buried, forgotten, or maybe even taken. I've seen this happen more than once, in the eyes of people who believed life had passed them by, who stayed silent, who carried the weight quietly, believing there was no one left to stand up for them. Then one day, just like any other day, a phone call comes, an email pops up, a name from the past resurfaces, not to reopen the wound, but to return what was always meant to be theirs. That is sacred justice. It doesn't arrive early, but it's never late. It comes when your soul is steady enough to receive it, not with bitterness, but with gratitude. If you've ever wondered, Aries, have I been forgotten? I want you to hear this with the quiet part of your heart. The universe has never and will never forget you. Your name is still on the table of destiny. It's always been there. But sometimes old energy, unhealed wounds, and stories left unresolved make it hard to feel that you're still being guided. I believe the things we cannot see are still moving on our behalf. A petition buried in paperwork, a settlement stuck in the system, a claim paused by a glitch. These things haven't disappeared. They're simply waiting for the timing to ripen and for your heart to grow wide enough to welcome restoration without fear. This is that moment, not because you chased it down, but because you've endured long enough, that the universe has decided it's time to make something right. You don't have to demand justice with anger, you just have to keep trusting. In kindness, in integrity, and in the sacred balance of a higher law. You're not alone. If there's a legal matter you left behind, if there's something you thought had slipped out of your hands, share it below. Maybe now is the time it circles back, not to reopen the wound, but to restore your faith, to remind you that what's right still has a way of finding its way home. I want you to understand this clearly. What's returning to you now isn't just money or property, it's recognition for the path you walked, quietly but fiercely. And so this return isn't just compensation, it's something far more powerful, a message that it's time to step out of the old version of yourself, the one who held it all in, who stayed quiet to avoid trouble, who lived like they had no right to ask for more. And sometimes the return isn't just to make things right, but to release you from the self you no longer need to be. Let's be honest, Aries, you're a warrior and no one questions that. You've walked through dry seasons and still kept your gaze steady. You stood tall where others would have collapsed, but even warriors get tired when they've been fighting battles that ended long ago. Sometimes you're not fighting out of hope, you're fighting out of habit, out of duty, out of that voice that says, I have to. How many times have you stayed in something that had no life left in it? How many times have you carried a role that no longer fits, just because you believed if you let go, everything would fall apart? I know how good you are at holding it all together, but sometimes holding on too long to what's already rotted means your hands are too full to receive what's new. And the cost of blind loyalty is your own vitality. This legal message coming back to you, it's not just about money, not just about a document or a decision. It's about placing choice back in your hands. You're no longer the one waiting to be named in someone else's story. You're no longer the side character in a script you never wrote. This is the moment you get to choose you. I've met so many people who spent their lives playing roles they never asked for. The oldest child who always had to be strong, the mother who had to keep the peace, the man who had to carry everyone. And one day they look in the mirror and don't recognize themselves. They don't remember when the voice inside them went quiet, only that it's been silent for far too long. Aries, if you've ever been in a place where you were waiting for justice and no one knew how much you gave up behind the scenes, write it down. Let it be seen, not to demand justice, but so you don't have to keep hiding in silence. Letting go doesn't mean you're weak. It might be the bravest act your soul ever made, because you're not giving up from exhaustion. You're letting go because it's time, and not everything you walk away from is a loss. Some things you release so you can return to your own wholeness. I want you to remember this. You have the right to step away from roles that have expired, the ones that leave you drained, exhausted but still smiling, the responsibilities someone handed you long ago, but that no longer belong to you now. That's not failure, that's evolution. Maybe you're thinking, if I stop carrying it, who will? But what you don't see yet is this: when you release it, only then can the right things walk in. Only then can others rise in their own story. Letting go isn't retreating, it's making room for you to live again. So write down one role you've been carrying that no longer fits who you are. Maybe it's the one who always stays calm, the one who can't show weakness, the one who always forgives no matter what. And then ask yourself, do I still want to live like this? If your answer is no, then you've just stepped into a journey deeper than any lawsuit, verdict, or settlement could ever go. You've stepped into the journey of release. And when you release those old roles, a quiet, sacred shift begins to unfold. Let's be honest, Aries. You are a warrior, and no one doubts that. You've walked through barren seasons and kept your gaze steady. You stood tall in the very places where others fell. But even warriors get tired, especially when they're fighting battles for things that died a long time ago. Sometimes you're not fighting because there's hope, but because it's a habit, because it's expected, because something inside whispers, I have to keep going. How many times have you stayed in something that had no life left in it? How many times have you kept carrying a role that no longer fits, just because you feared that letting go would make everything fall apart? I know how good you are at holding it all together, but sometimes, holding too tightly to what has already decayed means your hands are too full to receive anything new, and the price you pay for blind loyalty is your own life force. This legal message that's coming your way, it's not just about a document or a payment or a case. It's about something deeper, the return of choice, the return of your voice. You're no longer waiting to be called into someone else's story. You're no longer a side character in a script written for the comfort of others. This is your moment to choose yourself again. I've met so many people who spent their lives acting in roles they never chose. The oldest sibling, who always had to be strong. The mother, who always had to be patient. The man, who always had to carry the world. And then one day they look in the mirror and no longer recognize themselves. They don't know when. The life inside them stopped speaking. Only that it's been quiet for far too long. Aries, if you've ever waited for justice and no one knew how much you sacrificed behind the scenes, write it down. Let it be seen, not because you need to demand justice, but because your story deserves to no longer hide in silence. Letting go doesn't mean you're weak. It might be the bravest thing your soul has ever done. You're not quitting out of exhaustion. You're letting go because it's time, and not everything you walk away from is a loss. Some things you release so you can return to what is whole within you. I want you to remember this. You have the right to walk away from roles that have expired, the ones that exhaust you, that drain you, that still require a smile. When all you want to do is rest, responsibilities someone handed you long ago, but that no longer belong to you now. That's not failure, that's evolution. Maybe you're thinking, if I let go, who will keep holding it up? But what you don't see yet is this. When you release it, the right things finally have space to step in, and maybe, just maybe, someone else will finally get a chance to rise in their own story. Letting go isn't retreat, it's coming home to yourself. So try this. Write down a role you've been carrying but no longer want. Maybe it's the one who always stays calm, the one who can't be vulnerable, the one who always forgives no matter what. Then ask yourself, do I still want to live like this? If the answer is no, then you've already begun a journey deeper than any court case or legal outcome could ever take you. You've begun the journey of liberation. And when you release those old roles, a quiet, sacred shift begins to unfold. No fireworks, no drums, no official announcement from the outside world, just a quiet morning and you wake up feeling something has shifted. You breathe a little easier, not because everything's changed, but because for the first time in a long time, you're no longer bracing yourself against the world. Aries, transformation doesn't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it shows up as peace, right in the middle of your chest, like the moment you pause your work, look up, and realize you no longer need to prove anything. I call that the soul's first exhale. When the message arrives from a lawyer, a court, a system you once gave up on, it may not look like much on the surface. A short email, a polite call, a notice you weren't expecting, but behind it is something far greater, a confirmation that you were never forgotten, never dismissed, never left behind. And the real shift isn't in receiving what's rightfully yours, it's in realizing you were never the one who had to prove anything to begin with. You're not being chosen because you were right. You're being reminded that you've always been enough. And now, in the quiet grace of the universe, you're being told again, you don't need to be worthy to receive what's meant for you. You just need to be willing to open your heart. Your journey, Aries, was never about seeking justice with clenched fists. It's the path of a powerful soul who once believed they had to carry everything, but is now learning how to receive. I know you're used to doing it all on your own. You don't wait for help. You don't expect rescue. But sometimes the deepest healing doesn't come from doing more. It comes from finally stopping and allowing yourself to be supported. What has made you feel like you've carried too much for too long? Is it the role you play in your family? The image you're forced to maintain at work? The expectations you placed on yourself because no one ever taught you how to live more gently? Try writing down 3 things you're ready to release. You don't have to act on them yet, but the moment you name something, you begin to transform it. I once held so many things inside, unspoken words, failures no one saw, responsibilities others handed me without asking. I thought I was strong, but the truth was I was just tired, and only when I began to let go of even a little did I finally understand happiness isn't found in what we reach, it's in what we lay down along the way. So imagine this, Aries, you're standing at a great door. It doesn't open through force. It opens through inner agreement. And only when you whisper, "I don't need to prove myself anymore," does the handle begin to tremble. And when you walk through it, you will not be the same. You'll be someone who no longer has to hold it all in, no longer has to fight to be seen. You will be someone finally living in the deepest kind of freedom. And once you begin to let go, Aries, the most beautiful thing happens. You start choosing again. For far too long, Aries, you've been living in survival mode. You wake up out of duty, not desire. You make choices from fear, not freedom. You've learned to shrink your dreams, just enough to fit into the leftovers, after the world takes what it wants. But what if tomorrow you receive everything that was once delayed? The money, the justice, the compensation, the long-forgotten agreement that suddenly finds its way back to you. What if the law speaks in your favor and the universe opens a massive door just for you? What would you do with that kind of freedom? I'm not asking what you would buy. I'm asking, how would you live if you were no longer tied down by guilt, by fear, or the need to make someone else comfortable? Because freedom isn't just about doing anything you want. It's about becoming who you truly are, even if that version of you scares the people who once benefited from your silence. And the truth is, most of us don't know what to do. When we're no longer fighting to survive, we know how to run, to hustle, to endure, but no one taught us how to live from the quiet, sacred place of enough. That's why when real opportunity comes, some of us panic. We don't know what to do with peace, with power, with doors that aren't locked. I once asked a woman in her 60s who had just won a massive settlement after years in court what she would do next, and she said with a trembling but joyful voice, "I've never thought past tomorrow. I don't even know where to begin." Freedom can feel like an empty room, and we don't know how to place ourselves at the center of it, but little by little, you begin to hear your own dreams again, not the kind of dreams that impress others, but the kind that make you want to wake up in the morning with a heart still whole. So I want to invite you right now to do something simple but powerful. Write down 3 things you would do if you were truly free. No limits, no realism, no justifying what makes sense. Write as if everything you ever lacked has already been given to you. Write from the deepest place within, where your soul still believes that life can be softer than this. What would you do? Move to a place with more sunlight. Write that book. Open a tiny cafe that only sells what you love. Learn to love yourself without guilt, or maybe just sleep through the night without setting an alarm. Know this, when you write those things down, you're not daydreaming. You're redrawing the map of your life with the same hands that once held weapons for far too long, because here's the truth. Freedom doesn't come from having everything. It comes from no longer being bound to what you never chose in the first place, and that is one of the deepest forms of wealth. The kind that doesn't just fill your bank account, but fills your life with meaning. But before we can begin again, sometimes we have to close the unfinished pages of the past. One day, when you're sipping tea or driving home after a long, tired day, a message might arrive. A strange number might call. A person from the past may suddenly reappear. Something you thought had gone to sleep may awaken quietly in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, but not to disturb you, not to rekindle the past, only to close it, gently, in the way you once wished for, but never had the chance to receive. Aries, we often think healing means starting over, finding something new to fill the empty space. But sometimes, healing is simply sitting with the unfinished and whispering a final goodbye in silence. I once met a woman who carried a nameless connection in her heart for over 20 years. He left without a word. And every night she lived with the question, why? She didn't want him back. She just longed for a moment to say, thank you and goodbye. Not to hold on, but to finally let her soul breathe. There's someone you've been carrying in your heart like that. A word never spoken. A sadness you pretend isn't there. A silent weight you've carried alone. Now is the time to set it down. Not because you forgot, but because you no longer want it to walk with you into your future. This is not an invitation to forgive too soon or to confront something you're not ready to face. It's simply a soft question. What are you still holding on to that you no longer need? Write it down. A name, a memory, a broken dream, a quiet betrayal. Let your heart speak without judgment, and if you feel safe enough, burn that paper. Let it be a simple ritual, a signal to the universe. I'm ready to leave with gratitude. Endings don't need to be dramatic, they need to be true, and a heart only needs to be still enough to whisper, I loved, I lost, I learned, and I'm still here. You don't need to say goodbye with a grand voice. Just enough honesty for your own soul to hear it. It might be a whisper in the night, an imagined hug, a message you'll never send, or a memory you finally look at and smile. Not everything that once mattered is meant to follow you to the end of the road. Sometimes the very things we loved most are the ones we must release with tenderness. So if today your heart is ready to let go, let it go. Don't resist. Don't cling. Don't judge. Ask yourself gently, is there someone or something I've long wanted to release in peace, but haven't yet? Let it out. Write your story if you wish, or simply say, I'm ready to say goodbye in peace. And if you need a symbol, light a soft pink candle. It doesn't need to be fancy, just bright enough to remind you you're returning to yourself. You've gone far enough. Now it's time to get lighter, not to turn back, but to move forward, no longer carrying what no longer belongs to you. And once you let go, the light begins to return, not a flicker, but a flame. There's a sacred moment on every soul's journey when you pause, look back, and realize just how far you've come. Not for the applause, not for recognition, not for medals or a spotlight, but simply to know you're still standing and your heart is still warm. The Six of Wands doesn't speak of random luck. It's not about the ones who waited and were chosen. It's about the silent warriors, the souls who walked through fire with grace and never needed to scream victory. It's the image of someone who didn't win by taking more, but by never abandoning themselves, even when the whole world walked away. Aries, that someone is you. In every quiet, courageous step you've taken, you planted seeds no one else could see. When you chose kindness over revenge, when you chose to believe in good, even with a broken heart, when you chose to love yourself softly after years of trying to be enough. The universe saw it all, and now you are stepping into a new chapter, one filled with light and no longer shaped by fear. You don't have to be tough anymore. You don't have to hide your feelings just to be called strong. You are enough. And because you survived your longest winter without losing yourself, you now deserve to bloom in the warmth of your spiritual spring. I know you've been tired of trying, tired of pretending to be okay, tired of carrying it all alone. But there's one thing you never did. You never gave up. And that's why what's coming to you isn't just restoration, it's a new life, a life where you don't just survive. You finally get to live. No one teaches us how to rise with compassion, but you learned it yourself, and today, I invite you to own it with quiet, radiant pride. Write it down. I choose my life from the person I am today. That's not just a declaration, it's a sacred agreement between you and the universe. It marks the day you no longer borrow belief, no longer wait for permission, no longer fit into old molds that never truly held you. From this day forward, you get to choose again. You get to rebuild, not from ruins, but from the deepest part of you that always knew. You were not born just to endure. You were born to shine. And that light of yours, it's not blinding. It's not loud. It's steady. It's warm. It's resilient, just like you. Wherever you are on your journey, whether you're just beginning or nearing the destination, your light still holds value, and it will guide you through whatever shadows remain ahead. Thank you, Aries, for receiving this message with an open heart. May you walk forward with the freedom, peace, and divine justice you so deeply deserve.